welcome to everyone who's listening. Thank you for joining us. As it said in the intro, John and I have known each other since kindergarten, which is only like 10 years.
Yeah, it feels good to be this young, honestly.
I think that means 30, maybe
Has
29.
I think so. Wait, yeah, I think it's 30.
3 decades, which is cool, but also what?
So if you're not familiar with High-Low Buffalo, and you won't be because this is a Becca's family tradition that I'm now appropriating, it is within the
Your
course of a
family.
week. Family, okay, fair enough.
Your family.
Something good that happened, a low in the week, and then something just kind of off the beaten path, so to speak, something
Sure.
that you wouldn't have expected. So my high this week was my first year garden has exploded. I had a big tomato crop. I'm calling this a win. This is my first crack at a garden in a decade. So the experimental garden was a go. It was a hit.
Okay. Green thumb?
Too early to say mission accomplished. I'm a green thumb.
Okay.
And we're not feeding, thank God, for grocery stores at this point. But
The supply chain's still there.
supply yes, we appreciate the supply chain
All
because
right.
it's not, we rely heavily on it.
No Little House on the Prairie, no starvation on the Oregon Trail.
I can't say that I'm a frontierswoman yet, but I'm starting to lay down the path, and
Okay.
that feels nice.
Nice. Cheers.
My low, I'm gonna go right to it.
Please.
My child got pushed on the playground for the first time by an older boy, and I was just reminding myself in this moment that the answer is not to homeschool my children to prevent this from happening, or to go seek out a third grade boy to have a stern discussion with him. That this is part of life and part of growing up, and overall it is a good thing that she's experiencing this. But that was my low point.
Wait, let's not skip over that though. Let's come into that for a minute.
Have at it. What do you think?
I want to jump through the screen. We don't even live in the same state. No, it's hard, right? Because we don't want to rescue our kids because that stuff's going to come up, right?
Totally.
And yet, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, she called in sick after this, air quotes, and like I pick her up, I'm like, what hurts? First it's the stomach, then actually it's somewhere where she has a band-aid, and we like peel back the layers of the onion, which were not hard to do. We're about 30 seconds into the conversation. And as it would turn out, in day 4 of first grade, I got pushed on the playground for the first time by an older boy. Yeah, and this didn't happen in kindergarten. I don't know, there's more shelter, but yeah, I had to fight my knee-jerk reaction. There's that moment between stimulus and
Homeschooler
reaction.
fights.
Yeah, homeschool or in a stern talking to somebody, or a teachable moment for my daughter. Probably for me mostly, honestly. But we worked through it, and we're back at school, and
Cool.
she looks forward to going to school, which
Well,
is
I mean, cheers to you in that, right? Like with my background being in counseling, and this will come out and stuff, but we talk about that, not rescuing, because what she learns now will play out in tenfold as a teenager, as an adult, as we see in our own lives, right?
yeah.
And so she's learned, oh, this can feel uncomfortable, and I can still do hard things, or I can
Mhm.
still push through that, right? Which is ironic because I'm like, oh, she's teaching us lessons that we're trying to share with share with listeners. I've like got on her for saying like, hey, this hurts, or like this sucks, or I'm gonna hide behind my first grade mask, which we all do at any age, and then come into this place of like, oh wait, I can process it with my dad who I love. So kudos to you. Because I'm sure internally you're raging or having whatever emotions, and externally you're like, yeah, that's hard. Or however you respond. I mean, maybe you went to blows, but
Yeah.
like my guess is knowing you, that you were like, okay, homeschooling's not the answer. Finding a third grader or whatever he is not the answer.
Yeah. Signing up
Okay, how do
for
I just sit in
jujitsu
this
in that
with you?
moment, also not the answer. Yeah, I think it's like it touches on a few things, resilience,
Yeah.
right? Like, and then, how do you navigate these social situations where you have to put boundaries in place, but also what happens when those boundaries are breached?
Yeah.
And what's the appropriate response? And here's the thing, she's gonna get many more repetitions. You don't like, it's not, this isn't learned with just one. So I'm not wishing for her to get pushed near the slide by another third grade boy. But there's gonna be something else tomorrow and the next day or whatever it may be. And there's an element of just you gotta let go. You just gotta let
Yeah.
it, like, you have the confidence that what we talk about at home or what the behavior that we embody at home, like, carries over, um, in that moment when it comes up again.
And bravo to you as a dad, right? Again, because you that's out of your control. There's nothing appropriate that you can do besides what you just did and sitting with her.
Yeah,
But that's, like, on the teachers, that's on staff, that's on your daughter, that's on the other child, right? Like, all of that is out of your control. So as a dad to say, like, "Hey, let me give you space," and as a father figure to a daughter figure to say, "Let me give you space to process," in the developmentally appropriate terms of, like, "Hey, what's going on? Let's peel
yeah.
back those layers," or whatever.
I
Um
feel like there's, like, a merit badge to be earned here, like, the non-helicopter parent. Can I where do I go get my
Uh,
merit badge for
okay,
this?
listeners all, whoever
Yeah,
is find John a merit badge, please. But
yeah,
no, kudos to you because that's exactly right. And what it fast forwards to of the teens, young adults, and adults I work with is they weren't taught those skills. And so high anxiety. There's correlations
yeah.
between those of us that had parents who let us learn the hard knocks, right? For better or for worse, and how we are resilient in different things. And then there's also correlations for those of us who had parents who did everything for us and the higher anxiety rates that we have. And so
Oh,
again, we
interesting.
can unpack that another time, but at the bottom line, get this man his merit badge, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
I'll
one
take
other
it.
thing, just the last thing I was gonna say to that,
Yeah.
to make it even more confusing, this boy may like her,
Oh, 100%.
right? And
100%.
so that's like a whole nother ballgame and like just a squirrel brain route that we could go down and stuff.
Yes.
But
We've had this discussion of so and so has a crush on me, and they push me, and it's sorting through the nuance of that's actually not how this is something that boys of your age do, but that's not how this should be expressed. I don't have this mastered, but this is a discussion that we've had from time to time.
good cheers to you again. Second merit badge. Now we're more working up to medal at this point because right, you're teaching her those boundaries and language around that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's gonna be a lengthy interview process when she starts dating, so it just,
She's gonna call she's gonna call me, your wife, her aunties, whoever, and be like, dad is,
yeah,
like, on a hard kick right now."
yeah,
Anyways, okay, coming back here. Thank you for sharing that because there's a
mhm.
lot to learn, and we that could even take us into another discussion at other points, whether that be language and boundaries, whether that be how do we process parenting, right? There's so many avenues we could take that, and so we'll table it for now. What is your buffalo or your fun story of the week?
Okay, so along the same theme of what happened at school, I have been receiving boxes from my parents. This is what happens when you move into your own house, I guess. This is the natural order of things. So I get all these boxes from my parents. I'm going through it, and there's like my middle school report cards, and I'm getting a kick out of reviewing these at best mediocre middle school report cards. And I found, in perfect condition, no less, a community award for sense of humor. This is my crown jewel of 6th grade. So Miss Craven, shout out to you for the glass half full outlook on
Oh.
my otherwise mediocre year.
Let's give, badges and awards to teachers. Right? Like, they're the unsung heroes of this day and age.
100%.
Um,
100%.
but we know that. Okay, we're gonna ride for that just for a minute. I'll ride on that. You have always been someone that brings joy into the space and humor into the space when necessary. So, we can dog on you, but let's also give space to that of, like, thank goodness that you exist, John, to lighten heavy situations, fun situations, all of that. Like, you can land a good line. That's just a reality. So, receive
Thank
it.
you.
Yes, receive
I
it.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah.
Back
Alright,
to
I'll go
you. I
quick.
wanna hear your high lows and buffaloes.
High is today's my kid's first day of school, and this mom is like, "Babies,
Oh
let your
my
wings spread. Fly
yeah.
as big as you want because 'cause
Wow.
it's been a fun summer, and it's also been just
Go
lots
for
of
it.
learning, lots of parenting learning, and
Yeah.
this is my first time doing parenting with a 4 and a 2-year-old. And also, I'm very grateful that my son loves school.
Yeah.
He's, like, super
Totally.
nerdy, and how do I continue to cultivate that, like, curiosity and that, like, gentleness in him?
Yeah, the feelings of, "My gosh, my child is growing up and it's their first day of school. This is amazing." And also, "Out you go.
Yeah,
Looking forward to a quiet house." Those are
models.
real. That's
Yeah.
a real thing.
For sure, and they're not, like, against each other, right? Those are just both
Yeah,
realities of, like, I love my kids dearly, and being a mom has is one of the greatest roles I never knew I would want. However, these kids have changed my life for the better, and I didn't know that I needed that enhancement, and so I share that of it is so fun, and also just was time, and I think that's something we can get into with purpose and stuff of time. When it's time, it's time, and so for me to hold them back or keep them in is actually not healthy for them, and so
yeah.
that's why I also say, like, "Go babies, you got this."
Okay, how about your low?
My low is we came back from visiting my grandma. It's just she's 94 and cognitively different things are coming in and out and there's we're trying to navigate that. And so hard to see someone age and also I mean this was a lady who skied until she was in her late 80s, like snow skied. So, like,
Legend.
just what yeah, like, what who I aspire to be. She's a babe, like, still.
Yeah,
Um, so just someone where I'm like, "Oh, man." So just hard in that regards of how mental cognitive ability or
yeah.
decline can affect us and stuff. So that was a low, and then what made me think of her is I found then my buffalo is I found this bookmark. It says, "To make a long story short, literary society established May 20th." And when I was getting set up for the pod, I found that, and okay, my grandpa died February 2020. COVID
Mhm.
hits March 2020. And
Yeah,
in May, my grandma's in another state. So, and in
yeah.
May, my sister and I sat on the phone and Zoom for 2 hours teaching my grandma how to Zoom. So that
Oh,
way
wow.
she wouldn't be alone. So since May 2020, we have had a book club for the last 5 years.
Wow.
So that's like so
That
that
is
was really fun
awesome.
to see this of like, "Oh,
Yeah,
we made that 5 years ago." And we named it after my grandpa because he could tell a long story that would take about 20 minutes, but he'd wrap it up. Like, it was he'd come full circle. So,
yeah.
um,
Bring this home. That is cool. These things that, like, yeah, doesn't the universe have a weird way of working out
yeah,
with these coincidences or God winks, as some people call it?
yeah,
Depends on, your spirituality. Wow, well, what a varied week we've had. The
yeah,
highs and lows, and the roller coaster of life continues. So, yeah, you brought the heat with this one. Intersectionality of time and purpose. And this is like, I feel like in my life, it's just what a apropos topic because those two things are in tension all the time.
yeah, no, our purposes and Jen and I got into this in our female conversation or her huddle conversation in the sense of, like, asking the question, "What is my purpose?" needs to be reworked into how do I live a purposeful life or where do I find purpose rather than like what is my purpose? Because if it's what is, that means it's stagnant, that it's a one time. So it's either I hit a home run or I don't, and that feels really
Mm.
heavy. Whereas if I say, am I living a purposeful life or how am I living purposefully? Then it's this dynamic disposition.
When we started talking about purpose, my immediate reaction was, wait a second, what is my purpose?
Yeah.
And and then I um it reminded me of a habit that I have. And this is the quest of man. So what happens back is I get on this I get on quests, okay? So here's a scenario. I'm hosting, or maybe I'm at a birthday party, or I'm at a music festival when going to a music festival was something that I might do. um, but let's say, for the sake of example, let's say I'm hosting friends for dinner, and I'm hosting in the first place to be with friends beyond like the 1 minute catch up that I get at daycare pickup. So, like, just assume that we're baseline prepared. The table set, food is like mostly cooked, guests arrive. And I love to just sign myself up for tasks and it just begins. So here we go. It's Kevin needs a Negroni. Well, I'm going to go get Kevin that well balanced 3-part cocktail. And it's going to take me 2 trips to the refrigerator for ingredients. And then next, little Isla needs an Elsa dress. So now I'm headed to the closet to find the Elsa dress, and I'm not going to emerge without a blue polyester dress. Found the dress, get it to Isla. Okay, now Allison needs a mocktail. Ooh, didn't see the mocktail request coming. I'm Googling mocktail recipes, okay? And this goes on, task after task, goes on for the duration of the evening until basically we sit down to eat. And then it starts back up after. So I'm essentially like, I'm Zelda or like a PG version of Tommy Vercetti in Grand Theft Auto on mission after mission throughout the evening. And then our guests leave, and I realize I've spent about like 10 minutes with guests in real conversation, which was the
Mm,
purpose of having guests in the first place. And I think, like, for me, my life can look like this sometimes. And whether it's like the purpose is defined well or not, actually gets the thing that is our purpose gets so little of our attention and time. And that is, I wanted to just like tee us up with that because this for me is it's like a microcosm for my life of how you, the way you spend your time against what you think, what you're actually valuing, or the thing that you want to get your time spent on. We've actually talked about this like in a different way, which is when we host, like you said, I like to cook and I like to be hospitable.
Host of the most right there.
Yeah. And then what happens though is like we I don't have I don't fulfill the purpose of why I'm having people over, which is like they may feel my hospitality, but they don't feel my presence, right? And they're like
Mhm.
not having a real conversation. It's like semantics. So
Wait,
um
can we pause there for a sec? Or
yeah,
keep
yeah.
going and we'll come back to that. Either way,
Well, I
either way.
guess where we've landed, and this is kind of germane to what we're talking about today, is like we have learned to host better by preparing more ahead of time, and
Mm,
like there enough is enough. Like rather than making 6 different cocktails, I might just say, like, "Here's a bottle of wine. We're gonna open a bottle of wine." Or,
yeah,
"I batched a cocktail for you." Or, "You know what? There's a beer in the fridge, and you're in my
yeah,
house enough that you should feel comfortable to go get a beer in the fridge."
yeah.
So, that comes back to, like, what is the boundary that I set for myself, that to the on the other side of that it actually doesn't feel like that that much of a compromise, right? If someone's like, "Oh, John wants me to go get a beer from the fridge," he feels what he's making me feel comfortable in his house, right?
Yeah.
So I think the nugget there is boundaries are important to fulfill a purpose. Boundaries with your time and with others, so that yeah, that you have the freedom to focus on what your purpose might be.
And so it's coming now back to the place of, is it in alignment with what gives me a meaningful life? And so I guess that'd be the question back to you then is, or the exercise for people to do listening or for ourselves is what do I value most in life? I value that people are seen. That's just something since I was a little kid. I don't know where that comes from, but innately, like, and innately, I've been like, oh, I see that person. Why wouldn't I just tell them I see them? Right. And it comes out in different ways, but like, hey, how are you? And my kids give me a hard time because it's like this unrequited hello. And they're like, why did you say hi to that person? They didn't say hi back. And I'm like, "Mhm." Like, it's
Yeah.
awkward sometimes, but, like, that's purposeful to me, and then it's been, like, compounded over the years in the sense now or fortified that when I work with youth, many of our students we were in a forum or multiple forums, and they would be like, "Hey, Miss B, when you see me down the hall or the general you, a teacher sees me and they choose to not say hello, that's like, hey, I've been seen and yet you won't see me and you're the adult." And so, like, that's just one example, right, where it's
Mhm.
fortified. So is even if it takes longer to go through the grocery store, to have this type of conversation, you and I, to greet all my students, whatever it may be, that I find meaning in that of like, hey,
Yeah.
what's up? How are you? Those sort of things. And so that's like a dance so that we have to figure out coming back to time is how much time do I have to meet those purposes? Like, or that meaningful life and figure out what my purpose is even, or the multiple purposes that I have, those roles and responsibilities that fulfill me. And so I think, like, as you're sharing your story, I'm coming to a place of, like, I need to do this too. What is a list that I value? What are my values? And would time actually acknowledge that crossover? Would that acknowledge where I find my purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, I think of it in a overlapping way, which is purpose. I think a purpose is that thing that you do that energizes you. So purpose isn't without work, but it's not just doing the task. It's also not sitting back and relaxing. Like my purpose is not to watch the Great British Bake Off as much as I love it.
Well,
Or alone, you know, the
yeah,
opposite ends of the reality TV spectrum. Like, what if so the way I think about purpose is like like the whiteboard idea of like, what is your purpose? And start writing things is really overwhelming to me.
yeah.
So I started thinking about like, what did I do in the past week that I enjoyed doing? What
Mm,
did I do? What in the past month? What were the things that I did that felt energizing to me? Not
yeah,
easy, but energizing, right? Like they require something of me but they also fill me up as I do these things. And, day, week, month, and where are the commonalities? Like, what are the things that are what's the through line?
Yep.
And that for me was like revealing of what my purpose and, dare I say it, purposes are, which is we can get to in a second. But for me, like, building things is where I find purpose. And that can be like physically actually building things, or it can be like at work when I'm doing work that I feel like I'm building something and it's like I'm laying proverbial bricks down. That is really exciting to me, even though it's hard work. The
Yep.
same is true like at home. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's Lincoln Logs. But it's like whether it's the habits or the other things the things that impact my family's life that is building, what I'm energized by. So I had
One,
to back into what my purpose is because I couldn't tell you like, "Oh, here's my 3 things," you
yeah.
know?
Which what a gift it is for those that can, right? Like, and then when I say that, I mean the overarching, right? We talk about micro and macro purposes. What's the large life macro, this is what I want to do with my life, this is how I exist, this is what I believe in, all those things serve a purpose. And for some, like my father and other people, they served 40 years in the same industry and they found
Mhm.
purpose, and he loved what he did. They found purpose in their same job. And what a gift that is from 18 on or 22 on or whatever. That is not my story. I'm still trying to grow up, right? Like, or I'm trying to figure out who I am when I grow up. And so finding, to your point, like, and going back to even when you were talking about your daughter and the low of the week, you were building resiliency in her, right? You were building an awareness for her to say, oh, I can go back to school. Oh, I
Mhm.
do have a voice. Oh, my boundaries matter. So even on a intellectual side or on an emotional side, you're a builder. And so that's cool to like think through what, like, maybe people know this or whatnot, but is there, we could take some sort of personality test and say like, oh, John's a builder, right? Like, I don't think that that exists
Yeah.
from a purpose test, because how often do we have that offered to us? But when we start looking at those threads that and the themes of our life, then we start to see, I find meaning here. Oh, there's purpose in this, and therefore I'm living a purpose-filled life. Or again, change that to how do I live purposefully as opposed to just what is my one solo purpose? Because that leaves us hanging out to dry when it's, yeah, unfulfilled.
Yeah, I mean, that next step in my mind of leading a purpose-filled life then is starting to get proactive around how you preserve the time to follow that purpose. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that, like, I'm gonna go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm gonna, like, "Sorry, family, I'm gonna go train for the next 6 months to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro."
Yeah.
That's not what I think it requires of us. I think it's small changes daily or even weekly that allow for a little bit more time for that thing that you deemed is your purpose, knowing that it's energizing. If you can get 5% more time, does the math follow that you get maybe 5% more energized? Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
there's, like, a little bit more if you just can draw boundaries around preserving time to do that thing. And look, that's in my for me, that might be what that looks like. Your purpose of being seen, I think that can play out in so many different ways that allows you to put that to use, like, at the drop of a hat, like, when you're out and about. But, like,
Yeah, it's just
what do you
micro and
think that
macros.
requires of you?
Yeah.
If you given your purpose, what would you say you need to do you feel like you could or should do more of to feel more aligned with living what your purpose is?
Mm. Yeah, that's good. There's like a phrase, and I'll answer that, is there's like this idea of time clarifies purpose. The more I recognize those threads that I have and the time that I give to it reveals the purpose that I want to serve or that I
Mm,
have within me. And so I am learning, I'm a people pleaser, recovering people pleaser.
recovering after the war.
That no is a healthy thing. And I'm like, I get why old people say no to things. I'm like, by the time
Mhm.
I'm my age and my elders, like, may I just say no and it like not hold any anxiety or any weight in me, and just like, no, that's a beautiful thing. And so that's something as I learn, because when I say no to things that may like be fun or have, let's say, like a 10% increase in my life, when I say to no to that, and then I can have time with my kids more, or I can have time to travel, or I can have like, so travel, that's one thing, traveling, eating good food with friends. Like, I mean, it could be a hot dog and that's good enough food for me. Like,
Mhm.
but being experiences, like that is a currency for me. And so with the people that I love and that they know I love them, like that is a gift. And we talk about with our closest friends, it sometimes is a quarter passes of a year and we don't see each other. Like you and I, right? We've been friends for 30 years. We just decided we're 29. And it's been like some seasons we've gone through life where it's been that we've talked once or twice a year. And then other seasons
Mhm.
it's much more frequent, right? And so you and I love this. When I asked you to join the pod, you were like, yeah, because, and I said, what's your why? And you said, one of the first reasons is because it allows me to talk with my oldest friend once a week.
That's right. Catch up
That's
with your
power.
oldest
Like,
friend.
well, and I teared up and it was genuine because I'm like, Johnny, we've done life together. We've seen some of the hardest things. We've seen some really beautiful things. We've walked alongside. And like for us to recognize that that's the intersectionality between time and purpose is to say, oh, let me come back into a season where I can give time
Yep.
to seeing my oldest friend. Like, thank goodness for
Mhm.
technology for that. And yet, like, what a cool experience. So yeah, time clarifies purpose. And then the other thing that I'd say is that purpose evolves with time. So if I say that statement of like,
100%.
what is my purpose? If I hold on to that one thing, it doesn't allow me to evolve. I stay stagnant or static. Whereas if I say, okay, this is where I'm finding purpose in this season of life, my hands are open, it's less control. Now I can move into other seasons, and this purpose may stay around for a very long time, or I may find meaningful delight in gardening, right? With you sharing that,
Mhm.
like that may be something that brings you into the present moment. It puts food on your table and like it becomes a really fun thing.
I mean, at current moment, gardening is like it's white knuckling for me, I'm just, like, trying to hold on.
Yeah.
It's pretty fast paced mentally,
Okay, poor
but
poor example. No,
no,
just
and
kidding.
also no, you're exactly right. I think, like, I mean, the look at, like, the world's best athletes. They retire, and some do it gracefully.
Yeah,
Many do it gracefully, and their purpose was, like, aspiring to be the best at what they do,
yeah,
and everyone has to hang them up,
yeah,
and with the people that I've been around, like, that exercise of following a purpose translates to the next purpose, and it's like there's a practice of being used to following your purpose and the things that they have to say no to follow that
yeah.
purpose as an athlete. It requires a lot, right? And then it translates into the next thing, like, beautifully a lot of the time. As time goes by and responsibilities are added into your plate and blessings are added to your plate, your purpose evolves. Dare I say you might have 2, you know?
Yeah,
2 or more.
that was unexpected, right? And I know we need to wrap up. So coming into this place of like purpose. Okay, so seeing people, right? Like I loved playing sports. And we can talk about this all day. Like you and I have both had game-changing injuries,
Mhm.
game-altering injuries, leaving the field, right? And had my only identity and some of those moments did lead to deep grief, whether it was in teen
Yeah.
years or adulthood. Grief where I had to process through what is my identity, right? Because we could talk about that attachment of identity and purpose. In that though, or that intersectionality, if we go back to like, oh, I love seeing others, I then went from being like, oh, I loved being a teammate and I was really good at it on the
Mhm.
soccer field. Oh, but now I can do that in a workplace. Oh, I can do
Yeah.
that with some of my closest friends. Oh, I can do that with family because now that I'm not spending 10 to 20 hours a week on this skill on the pitch, like now I can come back and allow that time, yet still that connection of seeing others and go on and get my master's in counseling, right? Like whatever it may
Yeah.
be, or for you, right? Like you were a builder and no doubt that you created some of the best plays in football or things like that for your team, for yourself, like doing what you needed to on the field, in the classroom, creating funny skits for people to laugh, right? Like when you showed up in sixth grade, like whatever it may be, you were a builder from young. And because you allowed that, sure, it ebbed and flowed and there was emotions attached all around, but ultimately you're still a builder of families now and, a builder in your own sphere for work and influence and stuff. And so I think that that's a really cool through way to just say like the intersectionality of purpose and time is when I recognize the threads that are happening often in my life. That reveals purpose rather than me putting up a whiteboard and saying, what is my purpose?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Um It is, uh, this has been a good reminder to think about the time that I put in each week, whether that's from 8 to 5 or
Mm,
that's the time that I spend when the family's home, whatever it may be,
yeah,
um, to like, take a second and remind myself I'm, leading a purposeful life.
yeah, no doubt. And so let's just to wrap up, I'm gonna have us like walk through what you're talking about is the power of reflection, right? Awareness comes out of reflection, and a practical way is to look back over the last week and just say like, to your point, where did I find enjoyment? Where did I find experiences that stirred something within me, even if it was challenging, but it made me feel alive?
Mhm.
And just writing those down or thinking through them brings us into a place that then ultimately leads to gratitude. And we can get to that later, but brings us into a fulfilled life. And so starting in that place of reflection of what did I see this last week that allows me to be stirred up or to have a fun experience or whatever, and see, did that happen each week? Because when we start to see that through thread, then we're able to move. So let me bring this question back to our listeners too. The question for you, practical tip, reflection prompt. What felt most meaningful this week? And did my time reflect that? Wild ones, thank you for listening. Drop your thoughts, experiences, and answers to today's questions on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, and Facebook at Wild and Well Together. You are loved, you matter, you serve a purpose the world needs.